Hello, my name is Melanie Blackmore and I'm the Innovation Director at EduTrips. And I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today on how schools and colleges can save time when organising trips. So let's look at a few of those options that schools and colleges have had when organising trips in the past. You may remember, if you're old enough, back in the 80s, the old-fashioned handwritten forms and verbal confirmation and communication between parents and teachers. And then we moved over to the manual process, which included typing out forms. This is generally done by a teacher or by the school office administrator, and sending those letters out with the students to the guardian or emailed in some cases. So this is typical in the 90s and the noughties. However, moving forward, I'd like to introduce EduTrips, which is a revolutionary new online educational visit system. So instead of having manual paper-based processes, everything's online, although at any stage you can print off any of the forms, such as risk assessments and consent forms. So it still gives you the ability to do that. But on the other hand, it allows you to access information remotely. It has various automatic process flows in order to be able to make the authorisation process simple and easy, and ensuring that the right stakeholders can authorise trips at the right time before a trip actually begins. It also has a very simple and easy to use trip archiving and retrieval system, which saves hours and hours of time. And finally, it has an interactive, intuitive trip communication system that enables you to be able to communicate with parents and other guardians and teachers on important matters such as medical information and guardian consent as well. We appreciate that college tutors and school teachers are constantly juggling responsibilities, and the admin associated with trips can be seen as a burden. Unfortunately, these time pressures can also have consequences, such as trips not being authorised correctly internally. A college or a school may not receive authorisation from a guardian before the trip actually takes place. Risk assessments might not be completed properly, or risk assessments might not be completed at all. And also, there may be insufficient or inexperienced staff attending trips due to the lack of timely organisation. The key to saving time is to keep the process as simple as possible. And I'm just going to show you a few examples on how you can save hours, if not days, of time when planning your trips. First of all, my profile. This enables a trip planner to be able to select relevant staff to attend the trip, and also to have a look at what qualifications and competencies they have to run the trip. So quick and easy access and communication tool in order to be able to ask if they're available, to select them, and to include them within the trip planning process. It also has quick reminders to ensure that qualifications are kept up to date. Key contacts. So this is where handy contacts are available. For example, health and safety, finance, and this can be linked to your database if you're using ISAMS, for example, or another school or college database. From experience, we've found that time is often wasted searching for documents, especially in a large college or school, where documents could be stored in various different locations and departments, which can cause confusion or in some cases using the wrong forms. So it's useful to be able to have all of those documents available in a central repository, which enables you to then share best practice and just use the latest documents that your school or college should be using. So here are a few examples of some typical sorts of documents that could be available to all employees. So these are generic types of documents that you may find handy, such as a health and safety policy, a general risk assessment. You could also include other documents such as insurance and legal requirements in here as well. It's really easy to be able to upload them. You just go to your browser and upload the documents from here. Another time-consuming factor is waiting for hours or sometimes days for authorisation from the relevant department head, principal, bursar or deputy head in order to be able to start planning the trip in principle. And then, of course, there are other authorisations such as risk assessments or final consent. So these are all time-wasting methods if you're using a manual process. However, with EduTrips, we have a simple and easy to use messaging system. So this will, when you put in a trip request, will send it through to the authoriser immediately, and that authoriser can then authorise the trip, or they might want to reject the trip. They can have a look at the details, all the relevant information, and then authorise the trip, which means that the trip planner will receive an email straight away saying that the trip has either been authorised or it may need amending. And this is a typical example of what an initial trip authorisation request would look like. And the trip authoriser would just simply click authorise the trip or amend the trip and add any notes if required. So moving on to the trip planner. This is where you'll be able to see the status of your trips at the click of a button. So this is a simple and effective dashboard to give you complete visibility on all of the trips that are being run at any given time. It enables you to see the status of the trip, go into the trip and look at various elements. In this particular case, I want to see what the guardian consent status is of a particular trip. This is a Go Ape Outdoors trip, for example, and I can see that in some cases the consent hasn't been given. And again, a dashboard can be used. So I'd simply select those pupils that I would like to invite onto the trip, and I can then email the consent form. Or if a parent doesn't have an email address, I can simply print a blank consent form. And I can also add in any email notes if I want to. So if I come back from a lesson, I can see, because there should be green ticks on here from those parents that have given authorisation. For those that haven't, I can simply select again and email again. Now, this system is based on a British standard for health and safety and quality called BS 8848, which is a standard for organising trips safely. So at the very heart of this system is a risk-based tool, and as part of that we can provide risk assessment templates for you, and this is a main one, which is a generic risk assessment form, but you can upload your own risk assessment documents if you wish. This is an example of a risk assessment template, and you would simply select the types of threats or risks that might apply to the trip that you're running. So that means that when it comes to printing off the information at the end of the planning, you would have only the risks that are relevant and the risk levels and the controls that you need to put in place. Of course, this would be available online as well, if needed, when you're actually on the trip. Another important element of BS 8848 is ensuring that you've also managed the risk concerning your third parties. So third-party providers such as transportation companies or tour operators, for example. And this enables you to be able to quickly send a checklist and a questionnaire to those third parties, requesting information such as a health and safety policy and insurance documents, which you can then upload into the system and have that as a point of reference. And finally, this is where the trip can be archived. This is where we can save an awful lot of time by reusing the trips. So we can reinstate it. Obviously, the student details won't be in it because there'll be different students with potentially different vulnerabilities and risks on that particular trip. However, it does save a lot of time in terms of being able to retrieve all the necessary information on the trip itself in terms of relation to the curriculum and third-party providers, etc. And again, once you click on that, it would simply come up with a trip. You can select it and reuse it. So I'd just like to summarise some of the points that have been raised during this presentation on how you can save time when planning your trips. This column here represents the estimated time from manual-based system that you may be using at the moment when organising a residential trip. This then compares to using the EduTrips system and the amount of time spent then when organising a residential trip. So these are typical time-consuming elements of planning the trip. So getting initial authorisation, waiting and chasing for financial authorisation, creating and chasing guardian consents, which certainly can take a lot of time. And I'm being quite generous with the number of hours spent here because obviously it could take days or weeks to get that feedback back into the school or to the college. Finding the right risk assessment if you've got various types. So the EduTrip system, depending on the type of trip that you're planning, will automatically provide you with the right fields to complete for your trip. Locating of insurance paperwork that should be checked against each trip that's run. Obtaining and checking third-party details. And completing and chasing the completed risk assessments. Again, this is all done online now. Some of the features that I haven't showed you include things like creating an equipment checklist and distributing that. And again, that's a quick and easy process in EduTrips. Checking that risk assessments have been completed correctly. Again, we can assign a certain person within the organisation to make sure that the risk assessments have been checked. Obtaining medical information regarding overseas residential trips. Again, that's done online with the parent. Creating a trip itinerary. And checking that all the necessary stages of the trip have been completed before final approval and that you have that information readily available either online or ready to print out. And then finally, just waiting for the final authorisation before you can actually run the trip. So in total, and this is again being quite generous, that's 37 hours on average. So you can imagine that's a full working week for an individual. And obviously that time could be better used teaching rather than on administration tasks and planning the trips. So as you can see, this can save a significant amount of time when using an online system such as EduTrips. But don't just take our word for it. This is a quote from one of our clients called Alton College, who played an integral part in the development of EduTrips specifically for colleges, as the system was originally based for schools. So what are the next steps? Well, we'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you've got at all on EduTrips. We can then arrange a demonstration. Now, we can either do this online or we can do it in person, whichever you prefer. You just need access to the internet and a telephone, and that's it. And then finally, the installation is very easy. We can do that within a matter of minutes, and we can help you to get started and using EduTrips. And of course, we can provide training. Again, that can either be provided in person or through videos, whatever you prefer. So I hope that this webinar has been helpful in terms of understanding how time can be saved when planning your trips. Thank you very much for listening.